Hi, this is Jen from Cookies, Cupcakes, and Cardio.com. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a very simple chocolate buttercream recipe. All you need is your bowl, your mixer stand, or your hand beaters, and you can get started right along with us. So the ingredients that you're going to need for this recipe are half a cup of butter, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 3 cups of icing sugar or confectioner's sugar. You're going to need approximately half a cup of milk, but you probably won't go through that. We're going to use tablespoon measurements of milk into the icing, and 1/3 of a cup of cocoa. So the first thing you want to do is whip your butter. So just put it into your bowl and turn it on. Make sure your butter is nice and light and fluffy before you start to add your other ingredients. That looks about good for here. So I'm just going to give it a scrape to get it all back together. The next thing I'm going to add is just about half of my icing sugar. Gradually add that into your bowl. It's about half. And you want to start your mixer out very slowly. Just going to let it mix up until it starts to incorporate the butter. I like to add about 1 teaspoon of milk at this point, just helps the process. So you can see that it's slowly starting to come together, the bottom of the bowl there, and speed it up a little bit. So once it's looking like this, just more, it's stuck together, it's yellowish, you can start to add your vanilla. Another teaspoon or tablespoon of milk. And the rest of your icing sugar. Just slowly sprinkle that in there. Another tablespoon. So that's been 4 in total. And we're just going to pause here and scrape the bowl. We want to make sure all the icing sugar that we've dumped in is now going to be mixed in before we add our cocoa. So the consistency of your icing that you're looking for is light and fluffy. Makes it easier to put on your cake. It makes it easier to pipe if you're doing buttercream flowers or whatever, if you're at that stage of decorating. Give it one more mix, then I'm going to add the cocoa. So 1/3 of the cocoa. And at some point in the recipe, whenever I add the cocoa, it likes to fly out of the bowl at me. So I want to start it really slowly. And finally, no flying cocoa through the air. I'm going to add about half of a tablespoon. So I don't want it to be too moist because it was at the perfect consistency before. You can see it's got that nice dark rich color. Scrape the bowl one more time before we call it. Check the consistency at this point. It's a little bit heavy right now. I think I'm going to add the last half of that tablespoon. Yeah, it's quite heavy to move. Okay, last half tablespoon added in. and we'll give it a final mix. So there you have it. That's how you make chocolate buttercream frosting to ice a cake with. And the next step, obviously, is to ice that cake. So we'll be right back with a chocolate cake and show you how to cover that one simply with this icing that you've made. So we have the buttercream frosting all made up, the chocolate version. And over here, I also have a chocolate cake that we actually made for another video. So if you're interested in learning how to make your own homemade chocolate cake from scratch, find that video on our channel. And so I'm just going to show you a simple way to frost the cake, cover the cake in icing, however you want to call that. And all you're going to need is, I just have a flat spatula here. It's used for cake decorating. You could even use a butter knife. You can use a kitchen spatula, whatever you've got that's handy, just to smooth the icing back and forth. Pretty much you can use anything that would satisfy that. So I'm just going to take up this cake here. Actually, first, forgot to show you, I want to be able to anchor the cake to the board. So I'm just putting a little bit of chocolate onto the board there, and that just stops the cake from moving around too much. So just find your cake on the center of the board here, and I'm just going to put a dollop of icing into the middle. And then I'm just going to use my spatula or my knife, whatever I've got on hand. I'm just going to work it around. This adds a little bit of sweetness in the center of your cake if you're using just the icing in the middle. There's also, you can use lots of different things to fill the cake, like pudding, mousse, and we actually have a video up on how to fill a cake with a homemade chocolate ganache, and that is delicious. So check that one out too if you're interested in that. Just gonna put a little layer in there. Not too much, don't want to go overboard on the sweetness. Then the next level, we just bring over this cake over here, put it up on top, line it up, and then we start to cover. So I like to work with most of the icing up on the top. I just find it's easier to grab from rather than trying to get from the center of the bowl. So I just take a little dollop off the top here and I just stretch it down and wipe along the edge. Just going around. And obviously the more times you go around, the smoother it will get. I'll just give you the general idea here. And chocolate is not forgiving when you're decorating a cake, so all those messes will need to be cleaned up afterwards. That's all simple. Just use paper towel to wipe off your cake board. So I'm just going to make sure all of the cake on the sides is covered first. And then we can start working on the top. Just going around, filling in all the open gaps of the cake. Smoothing it out. So if you are going to use a knife, make sure you use a big one. Makes the smoothing out process a lot easier. You don't have to use a turntable, you can use a regular plate. And before I got a turntable, I actually used an upside down bowl with a plate on top. It's a little bit more risky, but it still does the trick. Just go around a couple more times. And then you can just continue to work it, smoothing it out, and you will have your very own homemade, decorated chocolate cake covered with chocolate buttercream. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make homemade buttercream icing and how to frost and cover the cake. Please send us any of your questions or comments. We'd love to talk, get in conversation with you. And thank you for watching again, and please subscribe to our channel.